accordance with the Code of Meeting Practice, are we right to resume the meeting?
Okay, well, the question is, should the meeting be... And there is no debate.
Oh, there's no debate.
There is no debate. The rules are quite specific. The council will, on a reassembling, must, on a question put from the chairperson, decide without debate whether the business is to be proceeded with or not. So that is the question. Should the meeting proceed? It's either yes or no. So all in favour of yes, please raise your hand. No. Councillor Marquardt. So the meeting will resume. I warn you, Councillor Scandrett, formally, this is going to be forwarded to the Office of Local Government again, and that any further disorder, I will, without the staff through the General Manager, will leave the chamber. There is now very real issues in relation to work health and safety, in relation to what the staff are being continually subjected to, and that will also be then recorded and will be forwarded to the appropriate authorities. And as such, Council is putting themselves in a very dangerous area of a disorderly and dysfunctional council, and we all know the dire consequences of that. So Council is under a formal warning that any further, and I will be writing to the Minister of Local Government and to the Office of Local Government to take the appropriate action. Now, either you heed my warning or you go against it, and then there will be the consequences. I'm asking for a motion to suspend standing orders to deal with the minutes of committee meetings and then come back and deal with the items that we haven't dealt with. Move Councillor Whipper, seconded Councillor Andrews. That is the way the meeting will now proceed. I put that. All in favour? Against? Carried. We move... No, there's no reason for you to address the Chair, Councillor Scandrett. We move to the minutes of the... 15.1, the Finance Committee. Moved Councillor... Who moved it? Councillor Whipper, seconded Councillor Halstead. Any discussion on the Finance Committee? No discussion. I put it. Will you turn your light off, please, Councillor Scandrett?
I was just going to support you writing to the Minister.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett. That's very generous. All in favour, I put it again. Against, carried. We now move to the second 16.2, minutes of the Traffic Committee meeting held electronically on the 8th of January 2020. A mover, Councillor Scandrett, seconded Councillor Marquardt. Is there any discussion?
Just one, if I may, Mr Mayor. Councillor Halstead, could I just ask that matter in Barrel Street that I'd referred to you, is there any progress on that to be reported?
Depends which one you mean, to be quite frank.
That parking near driveways, near a particular...
It's been handled internally, there was no need for it to be dealt that other way.
Councillor Scandrett, you've asked a question.
It is underway, all right?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Halstead.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Put it. All in favour? Against, carried. Minutes of the Community Development Advisory Committee, page 243, 16.5. 216.
16.3 on page 216.
Oh, did I? I think I'll have to get my PA to do this for me instead of me. Can I ask that somebody move that recommendation? Moved Councillor Halstead, seconded Councillor Andrews. Any discussion? Put it. All in favour? Against? Carried. We now move to 16.4. Minutes of the Traffic Committee meeting held on Thursday the 13th of February. Move Councillor Halstead. Councillor Turlin. Move Councillor Turlin, seconded Councillor Halstead. Any discussion? Put it. All in favour? Against? Carried. 16.5, minutes of the Community Development Advisory Committee, 12th of November 19. Move Councillors Halstead, seconded Councillor Andrews. Any discussion? Oh, Councillor Whipper hand, was it? Okay, move Councillor Whipper, seconded Councillor Andrews. Put it. All in favour? Against? Carried. 16.6. Minutes of the Community Development Advisory Committee, moved Councillors Whipper and Markwart. Any discussion? Put it. All in favour? Against? Carried. 16.7, minutes of the Demographics and Housing Advisory Committee, meeting held on Wednesday the 19th of February. Now, was there an issue with this? Councillor Markwart, was there? Yeah, there was something in here that I must have read in relation to the
Mr Mayor, on page 272, is that the 4/20, that the local housing strategy increase the ratio of infill of greenfield developments, 70-30, provided it remains consistent with the SWOT analysis character statements contained in the endorsed town and village precinct, that one?
Yeah,
That's
so
a
that
problem
would
with that?
be in direct conflict with what we moved, inconsistent with today's. So my suggesting would be that you adopt the minutes with the exception of DEM 4/20. Move Councillor Nelson, seconded Councillor Markwart. Any discussion?
That's an opinion that's put forward, and we're not endorsing that because we endorsed the previous one already.
If we move these, they're adopted by the council as a recommendation.
That's it, they're non-binding now, Mr Mayor.
We have adopted a housing strategy tonight. This is inconsistent with the housing strategy that we adopted tonight.
I understand that, but this would have been done obviously prior,
Weeks ago.
on the 11th of March, not on the 11th of March.
Doesn't
whatever
matter.
It was the 19th of February, and this should have been brought forward in theory, but it hasn't been because it. Oh, anyway, I just
No,
think it's
it would be
irrelevant. It's
now
irrelevant.
inconsistent. So it's moved Councillor Nelson and seconded by Councillor Markwart.
Can I speak on this, please?
You can, but Councillor Turland?
Mr Mayor, this is a recommendation of a committee. It's not binding on council, and as Councillor Turlin just pointed out, it predates tonight anyway, but it's not binding.
If we adopted it is.
No, it isn't. It's a recommendation.
Okay, it's a recommendation. If
And-
council adopts the recommendation,
That's
yes.
right, Mr Mayor. It's a
Recommendation
recommendation until
and-
we adopt it, and then it becomes binding.
So thank you, Councillor Scandrett.
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor. But
Thank you.
I wonder what the
Moved
committees
by
are worth.
Moved by Councillor Nelson, seconded by Councillor Markwart, with the exception.
Councillor
I just wanted to,
sorry,
just to reinforce what Councillor Nelson said, if we adopt this tonight, then this motion, that motion, would override our previous motion, so it becomes a motion of council. So I thought you were aware of that, Councillor Scandrett. Should, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I knew somebody had picked up on it. I put the recommendation, all in favour, against, carried. Talk about, we have smoke and mirrors. Question with notice 17.1, 4/2020 report on,
Hang on,
no, that's it?
Hang on a minute.
we now move back to the beginning. Sorry, I thought that was...
Resume standing
So,
order. A motion to resume standing order.
so we've dealt with those, and then I said we would go back and deal with the exclusion, start commencing at 13.1, so we need page 186,
I'll move that motion
that we no, that
Resume.
resume, okay? Seconded by councillor Markwart. Any discussion? Put it, all in favour? Aye, carried.
No,
We
I'm
now,
voting against, anyone else against?
okay, I'll put it, those who support the resumption of the standing orders, and we start now on page 186, 13.1.
Now we'll support that.
Okay, so we're back to 13.1, where all the kerfuffle was, and I will ask councillors to follow meeting procedure, and if you do not follow meeting procedure, you have been formally warned 5 minutes ago. So we have that the report be noted.
It's been moved.
Moved by, who was it moved by?
Yes, and Markwart.
Okay, so it was moved by McLaughlin and Markwart. Then I put it, all in favour, against,
No.
carried.
Against,
We
record.
move on to 13.2. Yeah,
I'd
right, you,
Record.
well, if you want your name
my consenting vote. I
recorded.
think councillor Turland as well.
13.2, exclusion of notice of motion question with notice on 26th of February. Somebody move that, councillors Markwart and Nelson. And I put it. Yes, there's a motion on the business paper of the 26th. Oh, I see, the two items.
We'll amend it.
It will be amended, point taken, councillor Turland. Put it, all in favour, against, carried. Well, it's still carried, but you want to have your names recorded. Councillors Scandrett and Turland. 13.3, councillor planning day, November 2019. Move council, you move, question on to councillor Turland?
Oh, no, I'm going to debate it if we can.
There, councillor McLaughlin moved it, and I thought councillor Turland was seconding it, that's all.
Oh, I can
want a
second.
Yeah, councillor Turland seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yep.
Councillor Turland?
This particular request to try and tell the community where we spent their money on the 6th of November came up twice, and was refused twice by the General Manager. I don't know why, because it was just asking for a simple report. And I think I remember when it was agreed it would be a small report. Well, it's definitely a small report, there's no doubt there. But I think after being rejected twice in 2 other previous council meetings, finally, we get it here, which tells the public where we spent their money on the 6th of November. That's all that was asked for. Why it was refused twice by the General Manager, I have no idea.
Councillor,
It is the truth.
it wasn't
It
refused.
was
Actually
refused,
reflect
you
the
refused to
full
put it in
story.
twice.
Councillor Turland,
I'm only answering,
no, you're not. You're making
I've
statements.
been talked to, I've been making a statement back, and I believe I'm legally allowed to do that. I'm in debate. I'm not supposed to be questioned by anybody else, except for you. You're
Yes.
the only one that can question me.
That's not quite right. The General Manager can clarify a position if she feels there has been incorrect information.
Okay,
Given.
well, what I'll do is I will table the 2 times it's been refused at the next council meeting.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Yeah, thank you. No, look, I think that basically this might be something that in future, that I imagine you've asked just for this one, but Councillor Turner, yep, so in future we will expect a report just outlining, you know, what was discussed or what we did. There's climate change, there was Station Street, there was the playhouse, there was the pools, and all the other items we discussed. So I imagine, Mr Mayor, that's something that in future meeting such as this that we'll get a report. Is that the case?
Well, that will be
We'll consider it, councillor.
Thank you.
not up to me.
Thanks,
Councillor
Mr
Nelson.
Mayor. Look, the report goes into what the staff were presenting and updating the councillors on that day, keeping us informed. And you can see the Mittagong pool, Mittagong Playhouse, and that was quite a detail from the qualified engineer, and then the Station Street upgrade. So, you know, when you take this report into account, you've got to wonder why we've got these questions with notice or notices of motion further down in the business paper. So, because councillors are being informed all the time.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Scandrett.
We were informed, Councillor Nelson, on that day very carefully, and as I say, on item 2, Mittagong Playhouse, the staff advised us that the first recognition of the sag in the ridgeline on the playhouse was in December 2018. But of course, as we know, it took a long time for us to actually react to that and close the playhouse. We did that on the night of Anne of Green Gables many months later. But my
point of order.
The point of order is about the statement made, which is incorrect, about why there was the report, the delay in the report. The delay in the report was because we had to engage somebody.
Thank you.
So my point being, Councillor Nelson, that yes, the staff confirmed that they knew about the sag in the roof, the ridgeline, and they started to conduct investigations, which took many months.
Councillor
And meanwhile,
to the chair, please.
sorry, Mr. Mayor, council still continue to lease out for productions with people and children in the building, right up to when we cancelled it the night before Anne of Green Gables started. So I've confirmed that, and I think that's a weakness in here.
I do another point of order.
Councillor Scandrett,
I
you mislead this council.
Look,
What would you like me to
Mr.
I
Mayor,
think you should be fair and honest on relation to that, Councillor Scandrett.
Mr. Mayor, look, I've got the point of order. You can't close the playhouse down while you're waiting for the report. It might not be dangerous enough to close
that's
down.
what I'm saying.
How would you be if you start closing
Thank you,
it?
Councillor Nelson. Gee. I put the recommendation as moved by Councillor McLaughlin and Turlin. Put it all in favour, against, carried.
To confirm, it was on the 27th, it was knocked back.
13.4, legal report. Well, which one are you moving? That it be noted or we go into closed council? I suggest we go into closed council. Move Councillor Nelson and McLaughlin. Put it, all in favour, against, carried. We are now on the minutes of the finance meeting, so we've done all that, so we move over the back.
Page 282.
To page 283, which is question with notice, Bong Bong Street, 282, question with notice, report on Station Street. Well, I think we had a pretty fair update last week, unless Councillor House said. No, that's right.
Implicate or infer that, you know, we shouldn't have another report on Station Street. That was a simple question and that's happened. So yes, I agree, it should be noted, that's all. That should be noted.
Okay, move Councillor Halstead, second Councillor Nelson. Put it, all in favour, against, carried. Now we move on to question with notice, Bong Bong Street taxi rank, 17.2. Councillor Scandrett. The recommendation is that it be noted, so you're moving that way?
I'm happy to move that. I just want to address that briefly, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded,
Yeah, sure.
Councillor Halstead.
Look, we know that the car spaces at that end of town turn over 30 times a day on a regular Monday to Saturday basis. that's a lot of shopping. And at the moment, it's pretty desperate out there in retail land. And people are circling and circling the blocks there, looking for shopping, looking for business and all of that, and we can't get them parked. Yet, at best, from my observations, and I go past there quite a lot, it's one or two cabs waiting, and they're often called to jobs that don't require them picking up on the rank. In other words, they're sitting on the rank waiting. Now, I'll talk with a little bit of authority because I drove cabs for many years when I was at university, so I do know how they work. So did Councillor Markwood. And quite frankly, a lot of cabs do not get hailed off the rank. And you've got a phone there anyway, and everyone's got an app, and we've got all those competitors in the space. So my question was, Mr Mayor, let's just do a review there. I'm not offering to do it, but maybe I might have to, I don't know, of just the time and the occupancy on the rank versus maybe having some of those spaces reduced or made part-time taxi or whatever to try and get the stimulus going in this town, right? And it's a matter of people being able to park. Now, when we used to have the roundabout at Merrygang Street, you could actually go around and round a bit. You can't do that anymore. So it's a bit more difficult. And a lot of elderly people are having troubles with getting near where they want to go. They can park in a disabled space and they can park long time in a non-disabled space if they have a permit. But the point here is let's get the place moving. So I'm just asking, would there be any impediment on our staff? Maybe it's just done with a counter or a camera counter or something, just doing a brief analysis of the occupancy of that rank just to see whether the demand is there for 5 spaces. 5 spaces, it's 30 movements per space per day. That's a lot of lost parking and shopping opportunities.
Thank you. Councillor
Can I have
McLaughlin.
an answer to that, please, Mr Mayor, from staff?
The question is, well, the recommendation is that it be noted. So that's the recommendation.
I'm happy to make an amendment to that, and that a survey be examined, the feasibility of a survey be examined.
I would suggest that it goes to the Traffic Committee for comment first.
Okay, fine, it'll be referred to the Traffic
And the
Committee.
Southern Highlands taxis.
Well, of course, and other
Well,
hire
that's...
cars.
Refer
Ca-
it to the traffic committee.
Refer it to the
We'll
Traffic
see.
Committee initially.
Look, I think that's a good motion. I think that's worthwhile. Probably been a while since it's been reviewed. Times have moved on. We have got other operators in the area, Mr Mayor. Uber has moved into our Shire. You can have an app, you can pick up, and there's a car, you know where the car is, where it's coming. This is something left over from a long time ago. Obviously, we still probably need a taxi rank there. But I think the question with regard to how many spots are there, I think need to be assessed. And I think that's quite legitimate.
Thank you. Councillor Markwood.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I'm going to express an opinion on this. It's not just a view, I guess. One thing, 50 years ago when I drove taxi, no, not 50 years ago, 40 odd years ago when I drove taxis, not quite that old, the rule was, and it may have changed, taxis weren't allowed to park in the street and wait for fares, they had to stop in taxi ranks or go to the depot. Correct. So we do need some space there for the taxis, obviously, a reasonable amount of space. The other point is, and this is an observation, if I was concerned with this issue, I would raise this as a councillor request, because that way I can have discussions with staff and actually investigate the options available rather than bringing it to council, a full council, and tying up everyone's time. It's not a huge interest item, I believe, and if you do your initial homework and ask a few questions of council staff, I believe you get a better answer. So I would like to see, and I note, I think it's 6 or 7 or 8, I'm not quite sure, I should have counted, but half a dozen further questions, which I believe should normally go through council request. I can't understand, although I have an inkling, why they come to council, because it's really so much easier to resolve it with a discussion with the staff member. That's my view, it's a personal view, and I respect the right of everyone bringing questions and such like to council, but it's not the thing I do. Thank you.
Yes, it takes up a lot of time at this time of the year. Councillor Turner.
2 things I'd like to move in a second to think of the possibility of having a briefing session in relation to that issue, taxis, but also what is the state government policy and council's policy in relation to. Really, we need to know that as well. At the moment,
Just add a 3.
Well, I think we should have 3 and 4, and 3 should be, do we have a briefing session on it? And the second one is, what is the state and council's policy in relation to taxi ranks? Then we actually got all the information we need.
Okay.
So,
And I did ask the question 18, 20 months ago.
Yeah,
Councillor
I
Markle.
think, thank you,
Through
councillor
Councillor
Scandrett.
Imagine you've got an
I
answer,
think
Councillor.
the main thing is that you get a review of it by the traffic committee, and if they think it's worthy of further investigation, then that's where it goes. That's where the, okay. So, I would suggest that this is not worthy of a briefing session until it goes to the committee and we get some form of comment from staff out of it.
With greatest respect, it went to traffic 2.5 years ago.
That's
It's
right.
been to council request, and it was noted both times, but the thing has changed, as we're hearing here.
That's right.
And we need that parking, we need that shopper parking, that
Thank
food
you,
and so on.
councillor
So
Scandrett.
I'm happy to have that briefing if that's part of that discussion.
Okay, I put the recommendation. All in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. 17.3, questions with notice, walkways along Bong Bong Street, Bowral. Somebody move the recommendation. Moved councillor Scandrett, seconded councillor Nelson. That it be noted.
Thank you.
Put it, all in favour, against, carried. Question with notice, MOU Station Street upgrade from councillor Scandrett.
Mr Mayor, I'll just stand up and say, as councillor Halstead's said, look, I understand we've got...
Are you moving the recommendation?
Yes, sir.
Moved
we
by,
are.
seconded councillor
Thank you.
Markwood.
And I believe that we are going to have all of this in a report on the 25th of March. So it'll all be answered then, is that correct?
You will be provided with what information we have in relation to Station Street on the 25th of March.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr Mayor.
Put it.
That's
Oh,
what I
councillor
was
Nelson.
referring to before, when, it's obvious that council had a day to talk about this, and we've had further updates, so it's coming, and there's a report coming, so that's all right.
Yeah, councillor Scandrett, I wonder why it is that taken this long. I wonder who was responsible, councillor Scandrett, for it taking this long. 18.1, notices of motion. I put it, all in favour, against, carried. Notice of motion 3/2020, town water planning.
Right.
Need a mover and
We need a mover and a seconder for
seconder.
something.
I'll second it.
So-
Move councillor Scandrett, seconded councillor Turland.
Mr Mayor, councillors, this relates to a report done some 6 years ago, which presented to the villagers a connection cost at the gate of eligible in-town residents of $3,000 to $4,000. I have been asked by many people during this bushfire period whether we would reconsider that, and my answer has been consistently that it would have to go back to council for an update on the costing and the engineering before it would then come to community consultation. Quite precise on that, and I've said that on social media. So I put this motion together that we revisit all of that, and obviously the next step, were it to come back to and be consulted with the villagers and successfully supported with those villages of Penrose, Wingelow and Balmoral, then we'd be going shopping for funds. And I've made it quite clear for those who aren't aware that I don't see those funds anywhere in this council, none at all. This would be a report generated by staff, but the building of some 30 million of infrastructure, this is the time where the money, GM might agree, there's opportunities out there for well-presented business cases which are fully costed and engineered in state and federal. This is the time to have a look at it, if the villagers so do it. But I make it on one comment, everyone. If you're going to say it's got to be $3,000 to $4,000 connection cost, throw it away now, because it won't be supported. You'll get the result you want, like happened last time, because it needs to be something like $500 flat connection cost for houses in the village to have this insurance. A lot of them are on tank, and that They want to stay on tank, but they want the insurance of water, the choice. They want to not have to get water from our tanker, which was how much? $1,300 a day, the one at Wingecarribee, that was there for months. And the rail tankers from New South Wales Heritage Rail, the same up at Balmoral. And of course, a whole lot of the RFS guys were scratching for water at times because the dams were mud. So they were filling from water sources as well when they're refilling the tankers, 3,000-4,000 litres. So there's a risk issue in this too for our volunteer fireys who were out there giving their lives. So I commend it to you, councillors.
Councillor Nelson.
Yes. No, somebody else. Light.
Sorry.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I'll be voting against this, and if you're going to pass it, then you should reconsider within 1 month or seek clarification from the staff as to the complexity of what's being asked here. The second point is, I'm not sure that council has $35.3 million in reserves to
I just said that.
do that. Oh, did you just say that? Did
I
you?
said state federal.
Oh,
Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
interrupting.
councillors.
No.
I am.
Yeah, thank you.
Like you do.
Thank you, councillors.
Rarely I do. Only when you're
Councillor,
talking rubbish.
Councillor Nelson, Councillor Nelson.
So, so that's a problem there, and I think you all know seeking out federal and state infrastructure funding. And of course, the third point is there's going to be a review undertaken in regard to the bushfires, and I think you should wait until that's done by the state and federal government to see where that goes, because it might override this as well.
Thank you, Councillor Turland. Councillor,
Yeah, just a question on page 287. It says, Council was, however, planning to resurvey the community after 5 years. Yep. 2019 to determine the community's view on these changes, on these charges. Does that mean it's 2019 was the 5-year period that it got to? It must be, because it's 2014 that they were asked. So are we saying that you're intending to go back and ask council, the community? So really, that should be point 1 up front. As the council commit to resurveying the community.
As council was going to, yeah.
Yeah, but that should be point 1, and the rest of it is really, depends what the community and what the state and the Fed say, but that really we should be asking the community, and that should be point 1.
that is the best,
Point one.
the best one, Councillor
That's it. So
Turland.
if we just write that into the system there, so
So point 1 will read,
No, it
will
just be
council
point 1.
resume, resurvey the community to determine the community's view and charges. That's it.
Yep.
The rest of it is all talk, because if they don't want it, it doesn't happen.
So you're moving an amendment, Councillor?
No.
I'm just, we're working together on this, we'll change that. It's not an amendment, I will change the motion.
Councillor Whipper?
Change the motion.
I will change the motion.
The council carry out a resurvey of the residents of Barrow and Inspector Water Connection.
Balmoral and the other 3 villages? The other, I'm asking Councillor.
Well, we may as
Scandal.
well include the other villages at this stage as well. Do it, yeah.
The council resurveyed the
Fire-affected villages.
fire-affected villages for the request for having town water supply.
I'm happy to second Larry.
Second that.
Council Whippers.
No, Councillor Scandrett. No, it's not your motion, Councillor Scandrett. Councillor Whipper has moved an amendment. No, Councillor Whipper has moved an amendment. Councillor Turland, Scandrett.
It's getting too
Thank
late.
you.
So we have your amendment, which
So-
will be about resurveying the villages.
Okay, so that is just the single point. Okay, so let's circumnavigate this. I will put the amendment as moved by Councillor Whipper and seconded by Councillor Markwart. You can do what you like, but you may as well withdraw it because you're not going to get it up. I put the amendment first. All in
I want
favour
to
of
debate the
the...
amendment first. I've got to just...
Steamrolling.
The amendment, can I just go back to, is all villages affected by the fire. And can I just think that you might even add to that the potential of water reserve tank for firefighting? Not for palatable use, just for firefighting.
That's a separate issue.
Well, it probably is, but this is really, you're talking about fire-affected villages, so...
It is going to be, Councillor Whipper is right.
Yeah, just one tank.
It is going to be Councillor Nelson, in relation to this Royal Commission, there are going to be very strong recommendations that will come out of it. This is totally separate from that. It is a request to the villages without a water supply, do they want to consider town water? That's what Councillor Whipper is pushing.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Don't muddy the waters. I'd say through this survey, it may come back from Balmoral particularly about a reservoir that was mentioned at the public meeting. So that would be the opportunity for residents to suggest that at this stage in lieu of a water connection.
Right. Councillor Scandrett, you have been speaking on this all night, and I am now going to put the recommendation, the amendment first.
Yes, I'd like to
Then,
speak to that.
Councillor Scandrett, I am putting the amendment. All in favour of the amendment, raise your hands. Councillors, it's unanimous. Thank you. 18.2, Notice of Motion 2020 Resource Recovery Operating Hours.
Moved by me.
Do we have a seconder?
I'm happy to leave them as they are.
Is there a seconder for Councillor Scandrett's motion? Then it
relates to
lapses
the
for the want of a
hours of
seconder.
staff
We move
working
on
at
to
RSC.
18.3, Notice of Motion, poll for 2024 poll for Mayor. Councillor,
I believe I might have a few support.
is there a seconder? Councillor Nelson?
Thank you, Councillor.
I was going to move an amendment because
Well, you still can. You
still
don't have
can.
to second that. You can still move an amendment.
All right. Well, sure. You want to put your amendment up now?
well, can I just read it out?
Sure.
Then this will be the motion.
Bit more. I'm saying that in accordance with Section 16 of the Local Government Act 1993, Council conduct a constitutional referendum for a popularly elected mayor, and that such referendum be held at the Wingecarribee September 2020 local government election. Number 2, that the cost of such poll be financed along with the Wingecarribee 2020 local government election. Number 3, that the New South Wales Electoral Commission be advised of Council's decision in this matter. Pretty much the same as yours.
Accept that.
Are you moving it, Councillor Nelson?
You can move that.
Moved and seconded.
Yep. So we'll just pass that up. But anyway, look, this one's pretty straightforward, councillors. It's obviously there's a lot of interest in how the council operates and how it's led. There's obviously Wallandilly are going to have popular elected mayor elections in a few months in September, and I'm just saying let's test the water here with that within ourselves and bring that to the people in September. Thank you.
Councillor Turland?
Yeah, no, interesting. I tried to bring a poll for the 2016 election, and it was too expensive. It was going to cost too much money. I think by memory it was like about 50 grand, 60 grand or something. 40 grand with it? Yeah. I can't even remember what I bought it for, the poll. Was it the change to the Wingecarribee from the Southern Highlands?
To the Highlands, yes.
Southern Highlands from Wingecarribee?
That's right.
Because nobody could spell Wingecarribee, including me.
No one knew where it
No.
was.
So anyway, I think that was the issue, was the 40 odd grand by memory, and it got defeated in council. But there is no dollar term here what it's going to cost, but maybe the finance can actually chase through that cost that was put forward
Is there any
Mr.
idea,
Mooney?
the question being to staff, is there any idea of a estimate on conducting a referendum?
No, a poll, not a referendum.
Poll,
We'll
sorry.
take it on notice, councillor.
Yeah. Because why I'm saying that, if we're going to do one, we could do more in relation to other issues that we might think as councillors too.
Wingecarribee or Southern Highlands?
No, I didn't say that. That's a dead one. That was an old one. But there might be another one that somebody might come up with, like, so we don't have any tile roofs in Robertson because it doesn't match the streetscape, you know. So I don't know. But I just think we have an opportunity. We're doing one poll, we could do two or three.
Thank you. That'll all take time.
Sorry.
Sorry,
Ca-
I'm going to... Well, I kept pushing.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you. Look, I think I'll speak against this. I mean, you know, basically I think what the state government has done, Mr Mayor, with turning around from a yearly election for the mayor to a 2-year term has served us very well. Councillor Housestead, first off, as 2 years, you was 2 years. The acrimony that used to go on towards the election time of a mayor has gone, basically, I think. So I really don't think there is a need for this. My concerns are that a popularly elected mayor, and I know in the cities it happens, and you've got wards, you've got all that sort of thing, but I think the best people in the room to choose their leader are us. We are elected by the people, and we can determine who we think is the best person to lead us. Should I let you go first? Why, am I stealing your words?
Councillor.
Sorry,
Councillor.
yeah. So basically, I don't think there's a requirement for this. And if you were to get a popularly elected mayor, I've got concerns. You might get a very good person, but what happens if you get someone that's not so good? You got them for 4 years.
That's true. That's true.
Councillor Nelson, thank you.
Thank you. And look, just quickly, I wanted to put it into context from my experience working here. And the reason that I support this application is that when council was made up of 12 councillors, it meant that 7 of the 12 had to appoint the mayor. So that's a significant point, because you then got the clarity of a majority of councillors. But now, when council decided to have 9 councillors, it's easier for 5 councillors to control council, pretty much as was the case last term, which created a lot of dissent, apparently. If you have an elected mayor of the people, then you need 5 councillors to overturn any decision of council. Much harder if you've got an elected mayor there. And therefore, if it's a 4-4 decision, the mayor has the casting vote in a system of 9 councillors. And this gives, and also it gives the voting public an opportunity to have their democratic right to vote on whether we have a popularly elected mayor or not. Now, the disadvantages are that you could end up with someone from the Liberal Party, because as we all know, if the Liberal Party stand, they were getting 2 candidates in at the 2 previous elections when they stood. And the second point is that there was consideration in the report was that the one who has the most money wins. Now, I think the rules have been changed so that the money is capped, and so that's possibly solved. The next point is that, back to your point, is that somebody in the Shire may step up that could be a very good mayor for 4 years. And I think that, and having worked under a mayor and Councillor Lewis when he was mayor for 4 terms, gave the staff fantastic consistency, and I do think that next term, when there's an election done, there'll be a lot of toing and froing as to who's going to be the mayor for the first 2 years, who's going to be the mayor for the second term of 2 years, and there could be deals done. So a popularly elected mayor, there'll be no deals done. So you'll get who you get, and hopefully it's someone with high standing in the community that the people get to elect. Anyway, that's how I was thinking. This, of course, was done in September 2011. We had working groups done, and as a point of interest, where the Mayor, Councillor Halstead, asked if councillors were aware that Mr Ian Scandrett was making statements on the radio regarding the election of Mayor.
What's changed?
He hasn't changed.
Okay, councillors, we've got 6 minutes and then we run out of Facebook time, and I want this finished so we can go into closed committee. Councillor Mark Ward.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Just very briefly on this, I'm not sure which way to go, to be honest, but I'll just take you back to when I first came on council. Before I was on council, I had no idea how council operated. I had certainly no idea how a mayor was elected. After 3.5 years, I know the answer. It's a black art, there's deals done, and it's pretty dodgy.
It'll always be that way.
I'm concerned that if we go with a popularly elected mayor road, we end up with a potential mayor who's basically seeking popularity, not seeking the best for the council. And that's my big concern. I hear what Councillor Nelson says, he makes some excellent points. I'm really not sure which is the best way to go, but I think at this stage I'll oppose it simply because I think the people here, the other councillors around this table, know what we like out of public view. They see the real councillors. In here, we do have a little bit of a show. That's the nature of the business. But we know what other councillors are like in their day-to-day business. Unfortunately, the public don't see that. And I think fortunately they don't see it, because sometimes it's not very pretty. So I think we councillors are in the best place to elect, I won't say our leader, but the person who is the spokesperson for the council. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And quickly, I agree as well with Councillor Markwood. This is about the 4th time I've got up to speak against popularly elected mayor. Wards were the other one. Look, I think the deals are done in the lead up to the election with the popularly elected mayor. Don't kid yourself that they're not. So there would be expectations from those people that would support a popular. There could be expectations from certain sections of the community. They could be developers, they could be real estate agents, a whole host of people. So I think we just need to err on the side of caution. I think this process works well because we work together, we know each other, we know, and it's done. The vote is done obviously on the numbers, who can represent and speak for council. I think don't muck around with it. There's a danger in it, councillors. Don't kid yourself.
Okay, and very briefly, I'll support what Councillor Whip is saying, and McLaughlin and Mark Ward. And yes, I know the time, but why I want to explain this is that I ran on a platform that I would consider a popular elected mayor as a referendum. Yes, we did. The problem being that, not a problem, Councillor McLaughlin's right, the state government changed, made it 2-year terms, and that has removed a lot of the bits and pieces of what Councillor Whip is talking about. So I'll be voting against it. Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There's just, sorry, could you just correct that? It's a motion moved by me and seconded by Councillor Nelson, who gave us those good words. Look, popularly elected mayor is, I think, probably a misnomer, but it's the correct title for it. But it's actually a community elected mayor. In other words, the community want to have a say in who is running the council, who is leading the council, who is elected there as their representatives. I totally agree with you, Councillor Whipper. I hate wards. I think they're the most divisive thing, and they end up centralising power to parties. So that's that. But giving the community an opportunity to elect the mayor in their shire, I think that's quite democratic, councillors. And here we are trying to affect that. Why don't you let them have the poll? And if they agree with you, then you've dealt with the matter once and for all. And we did that with the leisure centre, I remember. That was a very definitive response. We dropped it. So that's why I'm saying here, let's just ask the people who in the community want to have a popular elected mayor. It's a simple yes-no question.
Just a point of order, quickly. Mr Mayor, The motion says a constitutional referendum, not a poll. A constitutional referendum would say there's a big difference, because that would be it. So I think there's a bit of smoke and mirrors going on here.
Okay, I'm going to have to take that as a summing up. I will put the recommendation as moved by councillors Scandrett and Nelson. I put that motion. All in favour? Councillors Halstead, Nelson, Turland and Scandrett. Those against? Councillors Andrews, Whipper, Markwart, McLaughlin and Gare. I declare it lost. I now put the recommendation as such. All in favour?
We've done it, sorry.
Oh, we've all done it. We've done it. I need a recommendation now. We go into closed. Move Councillor McLaughlin, seconded Councillor Markwart. Any discussion? Put it all in favour? I thank you very much for members of the public. And we will now go into closed.